So that was the system part of this configuration page, and if you are set up and you got everything ready to go, the next line down is calibrate, and you can go into here and you can calibrate the touch screen and the display if you need to. If you're happy with what you got set up, you can save this configuration if you go to save configuration, and you can either create a new configuration, or if you made a change you can resave, and that's what we'll do. We'll just resave what we already did. So if you have different configurations on the screen that you would like to save, depending upon which implement or what you're doing in the field, you could come in here and then switch to another configuration that would be populated in this list here, and you could highlight it and hit the OK button, and it would switch to your different settings if you wanted to set up a different configuration while you had a field open. This next icon down here is where I have my Easy Steer plugged in, and this is where you can go in and do the setup, calibration, diagnostics for the Easy Steer, and go in and save the configuration if need be. If you are running in multiple different tractors and you have your different tractors saved in here, you could have all of them listed here after you've calibrated and saved them, and as you move the display and the Easy Steer to a different tractor or autopilot or whatever vehicle steering system, Easy Pilot, you're using, you can have those saved in here, and whenever you need to switch you could come in here and highlight it and hit the OK button, and it would remember all your calibration numbers, your measurements that you put in. The next tab down you see is your GPS receiver, and I am in demo mode here, and so for most of you guys, if you're running WAS, that would be the SBAS is your WAS correction signal in here, and OmniStar, and if you had this unlocked RTK or RTX, those would be, you would find those there also. You can see you have your exfil tab here. If you're running RTK and want to add exfil, that is where you would go to set up that. If you wanted to output a radar impulse, this is where we would go to set that up, and we'd have to tell it which connector it's plugged in on. You can see connector and C and D are available to do that with, and then match up the radar frequency rate of whatever is needed. So that is your GPS receiver setups. You can go into diagnostics. You can see your current speed, you can see your current heading, how many satellites you're viewing, your quality, we're fixed, that's good, your correction age, and your H-stop, H-stop error. You can see we're seeing our controller. There's our current firmware version for the GPS receiver, and as well as your OmniStar information there. Current position. So there's lots of different things on this page. The agri mode or log GPS serial. You guys don't have to worry about that. That's for technicians to go into if need be. The other part on this is your implement, and this is important in that you can set up many different implements, and you can see we have a planner set up, and if you have a planner, whether you have pullers or pushers or rear splitters, you can set up whichever combination of planner you got. The next tab over is your measurements. We got an 8-row planner, planting corn, 8-row, 30-inch rows, so 20 feet wide. Your measurements from the antenna to the planner, and general rule of thumb is like seed tubes on a corn planter. And then here you have your hitch to ground contact point, so your hitch to your seed tubes. And this has to do with your if you're running row clutches or section control, you can adjust the slide bar to allow the sensitivity of your side-to-side coverage. You can see on the left it's going to be very sensitive in that you might end up with gaps, and on the right It's going to be basically like a 99% of that width until it would shut off. So you can see you'll have a little bit of extra overlap there. Depending upon what you're doing, it may vary as to where you set these. This has to do with how the section control works in a boundary. Typically, as soon as that spray boom or row unit gets to the edge of a boundary, we want that thing to shut off. So we're going to have it very sensitive. So very low percentage, maybe 1% of the width of that section will shut it off when it comes into a boundary. We can program some intentional overlap if you're spraying and want a intentional overlap on the headlands or an already covered area. You could put in like 3 feet or something like that to start out with. Infill boundary, you can switch to the inner boundary, and you could shut off your row clutches on the inner boundary in the headland pattern, even without planting those outside circuits. So this allows you to plant the headlands last if you want to. Apply latency to boundary. Latency, think of that as like a delay, and you probably will want that at no, so that there is no delay in turning off your section control, especially if you're spraying on the display here. And you have variety set up on this screen. If you want to set up different varieties, you can see how you can add your different varieties here, and it'll generate a list, and then you can assign them to your different rows. So that is your implement setup. If you had TrueCount air clutches or Field IQ, you'd have to go into calibrate or diagnostics to do that. If you want to save the current configuration, you go to Save Configuration and hit the Save button, and it'll save all those measurements we just put in. Or if you're doing Field IQ or application control, it would save those with that also. If you wanted to switch to a different implement, you would go to Switch Configuration, and you could see I have some in here, so I could highlight sprayer and hit the OK button, and it would change it to the sprayer. It is telling me right here which one is current. If you want to get rid of an old one, you can highlight it and hit the delete button to get rid of an old one. If you want to create a new one, you can come in here and start a new implement if you would like. So that was about the configuration. Everything we just talked about was in that tool section there. The tractor icon is the one we go to when you're ready to open a field. And before we go into the field, it's going to ask you which configuration we want to use for the display, which vehicle you're going to use, and which steering system. And if you want to switch these, you can also switch these from this page, or you can go into edit them if you need to. And you can see this page will look familiar, and we could go into here and go into setup, and we could edit our easy steer settings if you need to. Or planner, if you wanted to switch to a different implement, you could go into switch and highlight sprayer and hit OK, and go on out and open your field and start spraying. Or if you wanted to edit your implement settings, you could do the same thing there and go into edit. Once you have your information, your implement correct, your vehicle correct, and you're ready to go to the field, hit the OK button. And we're going to be opening the field here. And this is important in that this is how the information is going to be saved in the display. And so if you were to want to go pull up the same exact event in the same field that you did, you would have to meet these criteria. So it's tiered. So client is kind of the parent company, the large organization. Farm is your individual farms that you have. And if you're doing custom operation, you may have several different clients in here that you need to switch to as you switch to different customers. So in order to start a new client, you would just hit the new button, you would type in the name and start a new client, and then it would be populated in that list in this down arrow once you have it in there, or you could import it from the USB drive. Farm, you can see we got some different farm names in here that we're using. If you need to change, you just highlight it and it changes to that farm name. For what we're doing, we're going to stay on the back 40. Your fields under each farm will be the individual fields, and if you hit the down arrow, you can see I've got 3 different fields in here, and you can switch to them very easily, or go into add a new field, and let's say we want to add field number 3 and hit the OK button. Now we're on field number 3. Your event, so you could have multiple different events in the same field in the same year, and the event is going to be, for example, I have planting 2013. You could also have spraying. Hit the OK button, and you've got spray in there. If we want to switch back to planting, we can switch back to planting. This is how the information in your field, for example, especially if you're doing yield data, or you're doing vehicle sync, or you are doing prescription, rate control, automatic rate control, you want to make sure that you have these criteria met exactly in order to pull that information up and or to save it. Variety setup, you can set up your different varieties. That screen looks a little familiar to you from when we did our implement setup. Event attributes, this is pretty much the information we've kind of told it thus far. You can see we can have a lot more possibility as far as information that you want in there, and you can just type it in custom. You could put in a variety of seed or a certain note that you want saved with that field. Once you have your client, farm, and field and your event put in here, you can hit the OK button. And you can go ahead and open up your field, and you can see that there's no line in here currently, or no coverage mapping. So this is your field run screen here. In the upper left corner, you have your satellite information, your latitude, longitude, number of satellites, what kind of signal you're running. That's that. Across the top here, that is your light bar that you have built in. This is your field screen, and you can see we have our offline distance and our speed. If you tap the screen, you can see we get a plus or minus. You can zoom in or zoom out. Trailing view. This is the information tab we were setting up earlier. You can see all 3 lines come up, and it overlays with the small screen for your field. Once I moved all the icons over there, go back to your regular field, and you can see you got a nice wide screen to work with as needed. If you just want to view offline distance, you can view that, or speed, or offline and speed.